All right, welcome back. My name is Chris Sachinelli, and I get to build, buy, and sell simple profit businesses every single day. And today we are talking about strategy, right? My goal for the day is to change your opinion on strategy. A lot of folks, especially bootstrappers, right, especially folks who are building simple, profitable businesses, oftentimes think strategy is pie in the sky, right? It's not rubber meets road. It's not the blocking and the tackling. It doesn't actually move the ball down the field in terms of getting to simple, profitable outcomes. My goal for today's conversation is to change that perspective. My goal is to change our perspective and hopefully, as a byproduct, also change our approach and learn how to appreciate our strategy and why it is so important to be able to align into to set simple strategies that get you to simple, profitable outcomes early and often to make good, timely decisions in your business and allocate your resources in the right places at the right time with the right people to get to the right outcomes in the right ways to hopefully actually move your business down the field, right? So let's jump on into it. What is strategy, right? Strategy at the end of the day, the simplest way to define strategy equals focus, right? Oftentimes as entrepreneurs, especially if we're early into the game, especially if our business is relatively new, maybe we're bootstrapping or we're a startup, right? You just raised a little bit of money, you're just getting going. You don't necessarily, maybe you have product market fit or you don't necessarily have product market fit, or you have product market fit and you're trying to figure out how to get more, right? Because every end is a new beginning, right? Everything always starts somewhere and you're always leveling up. So everybody always has to back into strategy and then define strategy in terms of a focus, right? It's this world that we live in where, we got to accept the realities, right? The fact of the matter is we can do anything, not really, right? We can't go jump off a building and fly, right? But we can do anything, but we can't do everything when it comes to the world of business or what our parameters are within our organizations or our companies, right? So again, there's a little bit of an asterisk there around that anything, right? But we oftentimes as entrepreneurs think we can do anything. And that's because we look at the world and we see opportunity, right? We see unlimited wants, right? We see all these things that we want to do or all these things that we could do that would add value to what we want to achieve, right? And especially passionate individuals, especially folks that are founders or bootstrappers or founding team members or just usually good human beings in general that care about what they do in life, right? Typically that care turns into passion and we want more because of it, right? And that want oftentimes dilutes focus, right? So the exercise when you're setting strategy and when you're thinking about strategy, it's really about this art of simple. It's really how do you focus, right? The way you do that, one of the ways that you do that, perhaps one of the best ways that you can do that, is to acknowledge your constraints, right? So you have this world where you have unlimited wants, right? Again, with an asterisk, and then you have limited and finite resources. The way in which we can become grounded in reality, right? Of the fact that we can do anything but not everything, right? The way that we can ground ourselves is to acknowledge our limitations. And the limitations that we can acknowledge, especially as capital allocators, which realistically founders, CEOs, executive team members, at the end of the day, your job is really capital allocation more than anything. And that capital can be defined in a number of different ways, right? So you have financial capital, money, you have human capital, people, you have time capital, right? You have intellectual property capital, right? You have infrastructural capital, right? You have all these things that, you have the ability to allocate. You have the ability, the freedom, and the privilege to make a decision of where it gets used, right? The point of utilization in your business. So the first thing that we got to do is acknowledge our resources. Like we got to go through and say what we have versus what we don't have, right? And then the art and the goal here of setting and casting out strategy is to refine focus, right? So first step would be to itemize our limited resources, actually pay attention to and appreciate our resources, right? This is very close to home if you're bootstrapping, but reality is this should be close to home to any business owner, because every business owner should hopefully ideally be running a capital efficient business, right? The goal of being in business is to stay in business. You want to stay in business for as long as possible, because the longer you're in business, the longer in which you can extract an economic profit or a gain from your business, right? Which gives you your overall return, or perhaps the amount of time that you could maybe stay afloat and outbeat your competition to stay in business and win the game, right? So it's like we all want to stay in business for as long as possible. So we should, all be passionate about caring about our resources and wanting to run a capital efficient organization, whether or not we're bootstrapped or venture backed, right? Where we have outside investors. So with that in mind, what we're going to want to do is inventory and itemize. And then we're going to want to go and inventory and itemize all of our wants. Our wants are the things that we would like to do, we want to do with our business. They're the things that are the high level things of goals when you're sitting down and you're talking, like maybe you're a solopreneur, so you're talking to yourself. Or if you're lucky enough to have, a founding team and other people around you, right, that you can share thought leadership with, it's the conversations you're having there. This is what we aspire to do. This is what we want to do. Wouldn't it be so great if we could accomplish this? Right? So you want to inventory all of those. Those are the wants, right? And then what you're going to want to do is prioritize. And it's the prioritization, it's the point and path of prioritization that allows us to get to a focus, right? So when we're prioritizing, we're trying to first look at, right, all of the wants and say, of these wants, what has the highest possible probability of success? Meaning, out of all of these things, let's rank and retrieve. Like maybe you could put a 0 to 10, 10 being the most probable of like, we're going to definitely do that. Throw down a ranking of how likely will we be able to achieve this with the resources that we have today. Asterisk there, your constraint is around the resources that you have, right? With what you have at your disposal today, what is the likelihood that we will achieve this? Meaning, like, if my first goal, if my first want is I would like to be able to leave my house today, right? I'd say that there's a 10, right? 0 out of 10, there's a 10 out of 10 chance that I could achieve that if that's what my focus was, right? If that's the want, right? Simple example, probably not the best, but want to get the point across, right? So you're going to want to rank and retrieve from 0 to 10. You could use whatever scale you want, highest probability of success. The reason for that is you're going to want to win, right? The whole goal here is to get to small wins and allow your small wins to accumulate into big wins, right? You want to get in business and stay in business, right? You want to move the ball down the field 1 yard at a time, 5 yards at a time, 10 yards at a time, right? Every 10 yards is a first down. Every first down is a new opportunity to get to the next one and then hopefully get to a touchdown, right? So you're playing the game in small steps. In order to play the game in small steps, you want to win at the game, right? You want to achieve what it is that you're setting off. So by setting your strategy around the things that have the highest probability of success, you're increasing your odds of getting to the win. And by getting to the first win, you can get to the next win, right? And it's just a game of wins. You're trying to accumulate as many wins as you possibly can over the long journey that you're on, right? The next thing that you want to do is prioritize based off of impact, right? So you're going to want to look at these wins. We'll go back to my example of, leaving my house. Leaving my house, it may be a win to me because I like to get outside, right? But in the grand scheme of things, I'm sure there's other things that I could be doing that would have a bigger, larger, greater impact on the likelihood of the success of my business, right? So you're going to want to rank and retrieve off of all of these things what the impact is, right? And sometimes a little bit more risk in terms of a lower probability of success. Sometimes that can justify when you're going back and you're prioritizing and you're making a good timely decision at the end of this exercise. Sometimes you can justify a little bit more risk, right, in higher probability of success for a greater win, right? But the goal here, the name of the game is to maximize. You want to optimize and maximize. You want to get the highest probability of success with the highest possible impact, right? The third thing that you're going to be looking at is the lowest cost, right? So you're going to want to go to each one of these things and you're going to want to allocate the resources that are going to need to go to it. And again, in resources, you're going to your limited resources list and you're actually working through each one of these things and you're saying, hey, what is going to go into this? What do I need to achieve this? What does this require? And you're going through your resource list and you're allocating resources against each of these wants, right? The name of the game here is you're going to want to rank and retrieve for the lowest cost, right? Now, that being said, it's at the bottom of the list because the real parameter is you just want to be able to afford it, right? So you don't want to necessarily go budget. You don't go budget with your strategy, right? You prioritize with your strategy. So first you want to get to the highest probability of success. Meaning it's like go back to like Warren Buffett, for example, from rules of investing. It's like your first rule of investing, don't lose money, right? You just want to get to 100% because your likelihood of succeeding is that much higher if you can. So you want to reduce your risk mitigation, right? If you take away risk, take risk off the table, all you're left with is the upside, right? So that's the why, the why behind that. So you want to prioritize with success, then impact, right? Cost is the bottom. So you just want to make sure you're making a good timely decision in terms of probability of success and the greatest impact. And then you want to be able to rank and retrieve that against the cost basis, right? Make sure that you can afford it because you can't make a decision to do something that you can't necessarily afford, right? Now, that's the first exercise. That's the first part of the exercise. And that's how you work through, right? So it's an actual functional thing that you can do. Now, the next thing that you want to think about as entrepreneurs, as founders, oftentimes what we have is shiny object syndrome, right? By definition, like we are bringing new things into this world. By definition, like we're aspiring for more, we're aspiring for new, we're creators, right? We want to bring things into fruition. Very often, right? Very often we can get caught up with the grass is always greener or shiny object, right? Like, oh, let me do this new thing. The discipline in terms of setting strategy comes into the discipline of avoiding shiny object. What you're going to want to do in setting strategy is to first focus on what you can do more of, right? So it's like you want to do things that you want to first prioritize with things that you're already doing that work, right? So first look at the more button. You want to hit the more button onto things that you're already doing. Example of this. Say you have a sales process and say you are door knocking, right? And door knocking is getting you leads, right? Simple more. How do we knock more doors? Right? It's not let me go to social media and run a social media campaign or let me start cold calling or let me send cold emails or let me send brochures to doors. It's as simple as it gets. Let me just figure out how to get more doors. How do I knock more doors? Maybe that's more people, right? Maybe it's a better velocity of how we get people to the field, right? It's a function of more. So first you go more, then you go better, right? Better would be how do you do more with less, right? So now you're trying to lower costs, right? You're trying to identify what you're doing and you're trying to optimize it so that you can hit the more button with less resources, right? So it's a system of optimization. Once you've gone through your business system and you've identified the more options and the better options, that's when you then get to the new options, right? The goal is to cycle through this as quickly and efficiently as possible, right? Strategy, you're going to want a long-term strategy for sure. Probably do another video on setting and casting out long-term strategies. But strategy is a dynamic and fluid thing. It ebbs and flows, right? It goes with the wind. It changes and shapes like the water based off of outcomes, right? So you're paying attention to the outcomes and you're trying to dynamically shift and optimize and make good timely decisions. The two key words there, good and timely. By going through this exercise of discipline, you're going to hopefully make good decisions. The next step and challenge with strategy is timely. So you got to set parameters to your decisions, right? You got to have a strong left and a strong right. meaning we're going to be doing something. This is the strategy. We're going to be allocating these resources, right? So this is the finite left, and we're going to do it for this much time, the finite right. And this is our forecast. This is the hypothesis of what we expect. And then you're going to be benchmarking it in a given cadence, right? So maybe that cadence is a day, maybe it's a week, maybe it's a month, maybe it's a quarter. You need to be realistic with the cadence, but again, time is one of your resources. So you're trying to allocate your resources across the board, all of your resources in the best possible way. So if you can do an experiment in a day, right, as opposed to a quarter, then that's better, right? You're allocating your resources better. But if the experiment requires a quarter to run and you're only giving it a day, now you're making a bad decision and your probability of success is lower, right? So there you got to use and leverage all of these tools and mechanisms at your disposal, frameworks, to be able to make good, timely decisions, right? If you do the prioritization process appropriately and you're setting good strategy for your business, the outcome, right? Great strategies, the outcome of great strategies is they activate your team, right? The goal with strategy is not to get yourself to raise your hand and say, hey, this is what I need to do. The goal in business is to always pursue leverage. You're always trying to leverage up. You want to level up and leverage up, right? Leverage is the goal of business. That's how you get the more. The greatest leverage in your business today is the people that you have, right? Great people make great businesses. You got to have people, right? First off, right? So your goal should be people. Then you got to get those people great. And you want to activate them with strategy that works, right? So you want to empower your folks with really great strategy. And you know that it's great when they get activated, meaning like you're delegating out, you're casting vision of the strategy, you're setting what the strategy is and the goals associated with it, and they're able to take it and run with it and execute it, right? So that point of execution, the point of them self-delegating, you've already delegated the who, right? So it's like the who does what, why, and the how. So you're giving them the why and the what, and they are the who, and then they're going to self-delegate the how, the when, the where, right, to execute to the outcomes. Right? Great strategy activates folks and gets them activated into that point of self-delegation, which if you have good communication structures in your business, also feed the communication loops, and that feeds the optimization process, it feeds the activation process, and it feeds the accountability in your ecosystem, right? It's great strategies to activate your team into achieving the outcomes and maximizing the resources. So great strategies are going to maximize your resources, meaning you're going to do as much as possible with as little as possible so that you can do as most as possible, right? If you could run a strategy that's more capital efficient, right, and do more with less, then maybe you can run a couple of strategies, right? So you got to think about it that way too. How do we hit the maximization of our resources, right? And then also inclusive in that, it's the outcomes. So that's why it comes back to that achieving the highest probability of success. And the goal here is activating your people to care about those two things equally, if not more than you do. And the two things I'm referring to are the outcomes and the resources. The moment in time you can get your people to care about the utilization of resources, all resources, time, infrastructure, money, right? Relationships, everything. The faster you can get your people to appreciate resources and make good, timely decisions, and then truly care with an aligned why into those outcomes, that's when you really get magic inside of your organization, and strategy really works. And that strategy, when it's working, that creates and manufactures the leverage in your business that moves you forward, right? Extremely important, and it's an art, and it creates a tremendous amount of magic when it happens appropriately. Now, how do you know whether or not it's happening, right? Here's a great personal litmus test. This is something that I've paid attention to in myself, and then also in conversations when I just like talk and counsel, other entrepreneurs, founders, folks that are in this, living this life, doing this every single day, right? Because we got to appreciate the journey, trust the process, commit to the journey, right? So it's like, if you feel anxious, and this may be you watching this video today, and it's perfectly okay if it is, Right? If it is, you are not alone. There's many people out there. It shall pass, right? But you are not alone, and it's perfectly okay. And this is probably the why, right? So if you're an entrepreneur and you have a business and you're feeling a little bit anxious, right? You're like, you just feel that feeling, like, ugh, right? That anxiety oftentimes also gets us to the shiny object sometimes, right? Like this is a different conversation, scope of conversation, so I'm not going to go on a side quest. I'm going to keep on the main quest right now. But sometimes folks that have this anxiety as a founder, the knee-jerk reaction is to go new, right? And you're trying to fill and quell that anxiety. But if you can get the frameworks in place and the discipline in place, what I'm trying to communicate now is there's a better way to address and deal with that anxiety. But if you're an entrepreneur, if you're on a team, if you're in a startup, if you know this, if you're living this life, then you probably know what I'm talking about, and you probably feel this. You get this sense of anxiety, this sense of like manufactured internal urgency, in a sense that something's not right. Right? If you feel anxious, if you feel anxiety, then you likely lack focus, meaning you likely lack strategy, right? So if you feel anxiety, then there's a good chance you're lacking focus and you're thinking like, oh, I could do this, but I could also do this. Like, should I do this? You're indecisive. You're in your head, right? The moments in time that you don't know. The other thing about strategy is it gives you focus, which means that you take away the clutter. You're not thinking about the things that you could or should or can't. You're only thinking about the thing that you need to do. You're thinking about one thing, right? So it gives you focus, which is power, right? If you feel anxiety, there's a good chance you lack focus, and the action that you need to take is to focus on strategy. So if this is you in this moment in time, that's perfectly okay. What you do is follow this exercise and you get and build a strategy, right? Focus on all of your limited resources, focus on all of your unlimited wants, rank and retrieve them appropriately, and then pick the one thing, right? And then define a strategy. In another video, I'll go through like how to actually build a strategy that you can then delegate and hand off to folks and then get to that point of leverage, right? That's the next step in this journey. This is high level to build down into that, right? If you feel anxiety, you lack strategy, you lack focus on strategy, right? If you are lacking outcomes, right? If you're getting that feeling as an entrepreneur that things aren't happening, right? Oftentimes when we feel like things aren't happening, sometimes that's not anxiety, like that's concern, that's the natural fight or flight, right? Entrepreneurs have a natural fight or flight, and most entrepreneurs tend to fight. That's why we get into this game. That's why we build things. That's why we chase things. That's why we go after things. That's why we hunt things. Most entrepreneurs are hunters, not gatherers, right? So we typically fight, right? And you jump into it and you get reactive, right? When you feel it, and you typically feel it sooner than anybody else around you, right? So many folks on your team are like, no, I'm in the strategy. Like I'm doing my thing. Like I know that I got my frameworks, right? Especially if this was casted out appropriately and successfully and delegated successfully. Your team members around you are sitting here thinking like, no, like I know what I need to do. It's going to take me another like 4 weeks or so. Like we're good. We're trending in the right direction. If you don't have good comms loops set up in your business, right? If you don't have a good checks and balance around like OKRs or OSAs, whatever you're using, like good like metric tracking on a consistent weekly at minimum basis with good strong comm loops, there's a really good chance you're going to put yourself as a founder in this system of being reactive. And you're going to feel a certain way, even though you shouldn't at this moment in time. The other thing, stop, full stop, pause. The other thing is you didn't do this appropriately, right? So if you didn't set strategy with the parameters, the left and the right, that means you don't have a defined experiment. So you don't know whether or not something's working. And if you don't have the left and the right, meaning like these are the resources we're allocating, this is the time that we're doing it for, this is the expectations of what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do the comms loops, right, to keep a pulse of outcomes. If you don't have that framework in place, then you may well sit there and think things are bad when they're actually trending towards good. You just don't know. And the fear of the unknown becomes reactive, right? And that's when you start to change things or you jump to new or all these things, right? If you lack outcomes and you have the frameworks in place, then you're likely lacking execution, right? Thus, you need to focus on executing the strategy. All of the other things I just said is just setting up kind of parameters of the fact that executing strategy is simply using the framework of the strategy that you cast it off, right? So in order to execute strategy, right, because that's easier said than done, a lot of folks will just like say things, oh, you need to focus on executing. Well, what? What am I doing, right? Like, what do I do every day? What you're doing every day is executing on the framework of the strategy. Again, in another video, I'll do like what that exact delegation of a framework for a strategy to execute looks like. But it's going to look like, strong left, strong right, resources, time, expectations of the how, right? The steps to pursue, and then the comms loop in the middle. Either you don't have that, so you need to go and get that, or you do have that and you just need to focus on executing it and running the experiment, right? Do the hard work. Oftentimes, sometimes folks get, are caught slipping. Sometimes we slip, right? Just got to remind yourself, show up every day. You just got to show up every day. You got to put in the hard work. Trust the process, commit to the journey, right? Thing to acknowledge here, smart people fail fast, right? The smartest people that you probably know are the folks that they just learn faster, right? They're not like intellectually like crazy smart. And I guess you could also replace smart with successful. And I guess success is also kind of like in the eyes of the beholder. Some is financial, some's like love and family and stuff like that. But likelihood, like truly successful people are folks that master their craft, whatever their chosen craft is in life. Sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's religious, sometimes it's other, right? Whatever it is, but they're devoted to it and they become the best at it. And typically that pursuit of being the best is just learning faster than anybody else because you care so much. First, you care, you have a strong why, then you give yourself the frameworks to learn. Part of learning is to fail. So you're failing fast to learn faster, right? Because you're leveraging frameworks to do so. So smart people just fail fast, they learn fast, right? The way to do that is to set parameters, run fast, right? Run your experiment as fast as possible because, again, limited resources, one of those resources is time. You're trying to run it as fast as possible, and then you change your strategies when they're not working, right? You identify something in a reasonable way with a reasonable amount of time. You identify it as a success or a failure. If it's a failure, you change it. If it's a success, you do more of it. Once you do more of it, you do it better. And it's only until you do it better that you do something new, right? So the goal is to just figure out something that works at first, right? So over here, you got the first step. The first goal is just find something that works first, right? Quite literally, find something that works. Just work through this process and continue the process in an efficient and effective manner. Find something, a strategy, a focus that works. Rubber meets road. Go from 0 to 1. Right? The moment you go to 0 to 1 is a special thing. That's a magical thing in business. That's like you take an idea and then you turn it into something that's real, right? After you go 0 to 1, take what works and do it better, right? After you go 0 to 1, right? You're trying to, and if you don't have something that works with yet, you need to be as efficient and effective as a team as possible. Because when you don't have things that work, that means nothing's really coming in, especially in terms of revenue or money. That's when you're burning high. That's when you're not really appreciating your resources because it's like you can't realistically. You got to get something to work, right? So you got to do that really efficient and effective. That's when most businesses go out of business. That's when most businesses fails because they can't go through this process efficiently and effective and just get to something that works, the 0 to 1 moment. Once you get to 0 to 1, don't mess things up. Don't fudge things up. Don't create more risk. Just take what works and do it better, right? Once you get it better, or the best that it can within the resources you have, then add in more, right? At that moment in time, add in more. And the way to do that is you run small experiments until you go 0 to 1, right? Small micro experiments as resource efficient as possible. Tight communication loops, really clean parameters of what the experiment and expectations are across the team. Delegate successfully. Do it in the way of setting a strategy and a focus the right way. Change fast, which asterisk here, you got to be on the same page of your people as to like what change fast looks like. Because not everybody, most folks aren't comfortable with change. So if they don't know that this is going on, and you're trying to like get to the island before you drown, right? They're gonna think like things are just changing too fast. We can't get a steady foot here, and that's why you got to choose the right people to be in this type of environment, right? Some folks are better suited for large organizations or lifestyle, established lifestyle opportunities, right? Established opportunities, slow growth opportunities, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? You got to really find the right folks that are comfortable in a dynamic environment to be able to island hop, to be able to go from 0 to 1 and then do it more 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 until your island slowly becomes a nation, right? Change fast, leverage parameters to drive all of that, right? In the process, appreciate your people. Always appreciate your people. Identify tank fillers, identify tank emptiers. You have to, as a founder, be as conscious as possible about that and appreciative of the process. The better you get at the process, the better you can communicate it, the better you can teach, train, equip it, the better you could facilitate it, the better you can support it, the better you can appreciate the people inside of it, right? Thank you for watching this. Hopefully this was helpful. If it is, definitely like and subscribe. Please leave the comments in the section below. We're trying to build up the YouTube channel. Again, trust the process, commit to the journey. Until next time, I'll see you.